bring back the polytechnics, bring back technical skills, but also involve decision makers in getting their hands dirty, build it into the job description where people can't make decisions if they don't realise what's possible.
The realities behind the decisions.
The realities behind it, but also what's possible of like, you know, I've advocated for communities to government level in many different countries, to government ministers, and the community has a strong voice, and they are the voting electorate.
Yeah.
They're the public.
They're there because of us.
So basically, if a decision maker knows the tools, it's a direct link to his community or her community, and it's really, really, I can't say how important that is.
Croeso to GreenWales, the channel celebrating the people, businesses and projects building a greener, fairer Wales. Every week we speak to organisations creating real solutions aligned with the Future Generations Act and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, helping Wales lead the way in sustainability and innovation. Let's meet today's guest. Thank you for joining me today, Rupert. Can you please tell me a little bit about who you are, what you work on and the things that that's around your orbit?
Okay, well, yeah, I'm Rupert, and my background is in design. Community design and technology is something that I work on now. I work with it in line with community rights and social justice projects. I come from a people performing in spaces background. So I worked in film and TV and theatre, and then I worked as a technical logistician, keeping things warm in hot places, in cold places, keeping things cold in warm places like vaccines in fridges that are run by solar power in the middle of the desert, digging latrines, knowing what local technologies people already use, working with Médecins Sans Frontières doing that. So in very remote places, running airstrips, finding out lots of stuff all about what their place-based kind of outlook needs, what support it needs, and how it works for them. Now I work with those same communities. I ended up getting headhunted into helping them use open source tools to build community archives to show where their good stuff is, their assets, and like water wells and hospitals and schools, and then where their risks are, like, you know, in disasters where buildings might fall down in volcanoes. We make maps using the OpenStreetMap platform. And so that's where I'm coming from. I live in and have come from Wales for 35 years. I count myself Gymraeg. Siarad Cymraeg, dwi ddim yn siarad yn rigol, ond dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg, dwi'n ceisio llawer o gwaith yn datblygu'r iaith Cymraeg.
Thank you very much. We've had a couple of chats, and you've actually blown me away with the sort of projects that you do worldwide, but also then ultra local in places like Merthyr and Aberystwyth, and I think there's one in North Wales as well, isn't it?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so it's amazing, and hopefully we'll dig into that now. When you think about the future, what's one thing you hope Wales gets right? Now, you're doing a really good job of mapping things out in Wales, which can help people, you know, create what the future they want to create and hopefully get something right.
Well, you say that, but I'm not the mapper.
Good man.
So what I have always done with the communities that are precarious in various different places, I worked with the Ebola outbreak, which is topical right now.
Yes.
We've got another massive outbreak in DRC, in the Congo, in a place where we've actually worked, and this comes to another point where we've done a lot of preparation around having a map so that we can know where people are and where the markets and where the schools and where people are going to get infected, what facilities are. It's a good example, but it's actually where I started. But what I do is I work with communities, individuals, and I teach them. I'm a teacher, and I teach individuals to use their own smartphone. I teach digital skills, but free, open source digital skills. Sometimes people haven't seen a laptop before. They can work for the device, and I've arranged situations where their wages are part money with the aid budgets and part device saving up. So they end up with a digital device.
Yeah.
So then that goes on to sustaining involvement later on. So what I do is teach that and start with a model. What that has from the SDGs point of view, it involves digital inclusion and community engagement. Obviously, it ticks a lot of SDG boxes because people are often going out. The way that starts normally, there's a process which I could describe to you. But I think the question, which I might have to come back to.
It's fine. So when you think about the future, what's one thing you really hope Wales gets right?
I hope Wales gets technical empowerment, but not in a corporate way. DIY culture. And I hope that we realise that we've got resources, we've got energy, and we've got water here. I really hope Wales now manages to navigate an independent path with an independent economic idea. We're doing really well with wellbeing conceptualisation, and I'm hoping that the work that I do is implementing some of those, like the alternative curriculum, the circular economy, the idea of post-capitalism. We've got assets, we've been poor fiscally, but we're very rich in Wales in other ways. I really hope Wales understands that and understands how important that is in the bigger picture of international. I first heard of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. I was in a UN meeting in Kampala in Southeast Africa, Central East Africa, and I was introduced as, this is Rupert, he's British. And I, as always, just put a small hand up and said, I'm Welsh. And they said, Wales? Where's that? Oh, that's that amazing country with that incredible future of Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. This was in 2019, 17, and I hadn't heard of it at that point.
Wow.
So Wales has this, and I work in Sardinia with rural communities that are getting depopulated, people where they're choosing what to put on their map to represent themselves. And that's not chosen by Google, and it's not chosen by Ordnance Survey. Really important point. They choose not only the answers, but the questions they want in that system of how do they represent. In Sardinia, they said, Wales, but Wales was so strong in Europe. Wales had all the best ideas in The Hague, more powerful than England, isn't it? That's what they said.
That's because we're punching above our weight with the sort of policies that we're putting through as a
Good
country.
policies, innovative, and just an awareness that we were the first colony of England, perhaps, an awareness that of cultural blackout and an awareness of our place and stuff, and not necessarily following because we've been deprived of it, but in some ways that's done us good. It's done us good that we haven't had all the. I've had meetings with Irish delegates from Ireland who've talked about how they've lost all their buildings because during the Celtic Tiger economy, when we were looking at Ireland and envying all of the money that they were getting, the financial wealth that they were getting in the 1990s, they were ripping down buildings, getting rid of the traditional skills, crafts, technical memory, community memory about places and what they stood for and how things were built. They came to West Wales and they were like, wow, it's amazing that you've not only still got these buildings, but people know, I see people fixing them. We're riding around, and they were amazed at that. So we've been deprived in some ways, but that is now a power of Wales. I live in Wales. Part of the reason is that I came here from a West African country and I came back to England and it was as if it was alien. I'd seen something in Africa that I thought was so powerful, and that was community supporting each other. And when I then, around that time, came for the first time to West Wales and saw the same. And now that's where I think the power is.
We had a conversation to begin with, which was about a project or an embedding of skills that you've done in the community. And we talked about Merthyr and the Gurnos and the work that you've done there. We've talked about Ebola and what was that?
That was in Liberia. Sierra Leone. I was Sierra Leone, and then a couple of colleagues were running Liberia and Guinea,
Yeah, and now we're going to take that skill set and the things you did there and move it to Wales and implant it into a community that you've done in the Gurnos space.
So there's just a link then to just make a point to make that in those countries there was no map. The Google map was blank. So Google map is not blank here, but it's all about who you are, what's your credit card number, where have you shopped in that finger-licking chicken, now you're in McDonald's, now where are you going to spend next? Let's send you a Marks and Spencer's advert to go and buy some tea. It's about control. Some people argue it's about control, but it's certainly about a commercial interest. But the link that I was going to make was when we work in Africa, so we talked about making the map. We built a map, and when I say we, I did a few edits, whereas my people there made thousands of edits to an OpenStreetMap layer. It's like a wiki map, so where everyone contributes. The people with most authority are the most local. Doesn't matter about power structures, doesn't matter about governments. The person with the most power is the one that's most local to that place. A bit like Wikimedia, where Wikipedia with the person with the most expertise gets to defend and discuss their case in a collaborative way, where there's a conversation around things. I worked in Ebola, where we could say where people were getting infected and how to disambiguate names from the British names. And make sure we had tribal names, which meant that we didn't send our resources to the wrong named place, and that was really important. Out of that came and it was some interest of mine before this. My background academically is in how people relate to place through ethnic language stuff. So, I studied in Wales, so I did my master's, and it was on this subject. So I brought that into the Ebola outbreak, and that helped us to basically save lives by getting the right language attached to the right location. So what we did with the refugee crisis in northern Uganda, which was South Sudan and Congolese refugees mainly, was we had a large area. We didn't know where people were, how easy it was to get facilities. And what we did was we went to make the place. So after we'd started to map it, I started to realize that this was making a neo-city. There wasn't anything, there was something there, because you must never say, and that's part of the problem with mapping, that there's nothing there. But what was there was pastoral land. And now the aid agencies under UNHCR were putting in infrastructure, but we didn't know what shape it had. When people mapped it, it created an actual place that we called Bidi refugee settlement. I've got several maps of that, where the water is, where the education, how far people are, how many people are this far away from that resource, where you need to get new resources. National Geographic came and did a feature on us, all about this concept of how digital culture could go towards taking.
Is it this magazine?
It's this actual magazine.
Let me hold up. You keep talking.
Okay.
Look at the magazine.
This was back in the day. It's called A City Rises, if you have a National Geographic. Back in 2019 that was published. We collaborated with them and showed how the community were doing a massive 400,000 people involved DIY project to make their new place, to create a place through creating a map. And there's interesting theories about how a map leads to a place and a place leads to a map, and which came first, chicken and egg. So back to the naming places in the right language. Wales, I was back in Wales. I'd come back from that project, suddenly COVID. I got asked by the Director of Public Health in Cwmtawd Morgannwg to come down to Merthyr because we couldn't work out why people were getting, why we had this massive outbreak there. I mean, it was the first major one, I think. Massive, by massive I mean 30 people. But over 8 houses. Why was it so focused in a particular place? What was going on? What was the context? Doctors and medics have lost that connection with community now. The NHS don't understand how their community is because it's sort of depersonalised and people have been reduced to sort of datafication and numbers in a way. So the map has been really useful with MSF to show not only where vaccines are and medical stuff, but cholera is not a medical problem on typhoid, it's a water problem to do with drainage, to do with technical things.
Yeah.
So how does the map work technically? How can it show us how people behave? And we're back to theatre, film and TV. How do people behave? What do they need? Where do they go to the water? Then they go to the toilet, then they go and get food, then they go back to the toilet. This kind of stuff, we can make an image of it that's what they call a common operational picture. What came back with COVID was two things needed looking into. Why do people get COVID more? And then when they get it, why is it worse for those particular people? So why it's worse is a high level of kind of bad lifestyle choices, obesity and mobility issues subsequently. Why do they get it? Bad communications. There's actually something like 40 different languages spoken in Merthyr, which we only found out, again, by taking a conceptual set of data ideas to the community and saying, should we map where people are and where's the youth club? Oh no, they're all closed. Okay, let's map all the youth clubs that have closed over the last 5 years then, because you're saying this is what the problem is. Oh, the pubs have closed. People don't communicate, they don't trust each other because the social infrastructure is compromised. People have to get out in a car because there aren't local shops and there's nowhere for people to gather. They can't live share because they're isolated from each other. They don't cooperate and collaborate well. Why not? And then why don't they trust? Why don't they social distance when it's time to social? Actually, we found out it was poverty. That was the actual reason for that particular thing. People were sharing childcare with an infected baby. It was now we know that that's kind of the super spreader, that kind of agenda thing is quite a well-known narrative now. That was one of those instances. But what happened was the indicators, as we call it, for that were that these people struggle to feed their families. They all have to go out to work. They can't take time off if they're feeling a bit ill. They go into the workplace, they spread the infection around. If you were to solve the socioeconomic picture, you could then, So community geopolitics is really what this is all about, same in Africa. So we mapped there, we realized, because the measure of the success of my projects are that the premise of it, how much the premise changes as a result of the community coming and saying, you would never ask that question. I don't understand this question. And we practiced that and we asked people to ask each other in the classroom. And when they look at us gone out and say, we don't understand, we say, well, how would you do it? And then we work with how they would do it. So it's always about trialing and then rewriting from the community point of view. So that worked. So what came out was foraging maps of steep hills that stop people going up to the fresh veg shop and just dialing out for another Domino's. Bus stops that, sure, they're there, but does the bus come? Is there somewhere to sit? 60% obesity. You need to be able to get up a hill. You need a shelter in the rain and you need to be able to sit. Otherwise, the bus stop is useless. It's got to be
convenient,
right?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
It's got to be around what people's habits are. And that en masse can lead to huge burdens on the health system. And that was really the point of that. I can go on, but you might want to guide me here. But what happened after that then was during COVID, the other thing that happens, the National Library of Wales have an archive that has of interviews of called Storia Coedwig. They keep it in a casgliad werin in the People's Collection Wales, and they try to liberate these interviews they did with people who lived in the mountains where it's now depopulated, and up in the Ucheldir, up in the Cambrian Mountains, where I actually come from now. And I know, and I've worked in those mountains technically as that engineering person that I was telling you about earlier on. In between going away for work, I would always work in the forestry and on boardwalks and footpaths, and I know that community. And I know how they work. Where's their nearest shop? Where's their nearest bus stop? Similar problems, except public toilets. Funnily enough, there are less public toilets in Wales, and they're not supported by the government. But they are in sub-Saharan Africa. Anyway, which is an interesting point.
That's really interesting, yeah.
Wellbeing Commission, take note.
Yeah.
So we don't, for instance. What I ended up doing there was the National Library have this archive which they can't put into the public domain because they didn't ask the permission in the 1980s because the internet didn't exist. So they didn't know to ask the permission. Now it's locked, and unlocking it was the project. What happened actually as a result of that was it opened up my means of bringing that powerful community collaborative platform, which is, I describe OpenStreetMap as a global network of local communities. It's built, all of the data conventions are built by communities around the world who've said, we want to rescue our dog from the tree, and these are the important things that we think. If there's enough people, it's a critical mass, that will become a data convention that everybody observes. And that is getting used by governments, the county councils of Wales. They use OpenStreetMap as their first analytic base map. So we have a platform as contributors to have a voice. And really that's my main message, is we need to use that platform, and then our government needs to recognise how useful that is to connect with the community.
So if I was to say to somebody right now, if someone was like, I want to use that platform, how do they find it? What do they type in?
Yeah. So you type into a Google, into any search you like, you just type in the URL osm.org. So Oscar Sierra Mike.org, and that will take you to a big map of the world, and you'll see it's all in the different languages, because that's how the map is built by local communities. So in India, you'll see Sanskrit, and then you'll see the Arabic, you'll see the different languages. In Wales, Map Your Cymru have been working on a Welsh, specifically Welsh town layout. We did this activism within the communities of the uplands, workshops and trainings, urging people to come along and tell us what are you going to map?
I'm going to keep one of these.
Absolutely do. Yeah, put them along and keep as many as you like. What are you going to map? And you can map, we've got, I don't know if you can see, but in Aberystwyth there are a few landmarks.
I'll take a picture. It'll pop up on the screen.
So that has a whole leaflet. We've now developed a way of working where we look at that archive. We can index the old archives from the National Library, but what we do is use them to get a response from the older people and do an intergenerational project where young people are teamed up with an older person, might be Mamgidaki, ideally, and they can be the digital scribe, the archivist, and the older person can be the historian who carries the community memory. And then they tell a story in response to either a place name that's got reinstated on the map. So we've gone that lower level down from Map Your Cymru, where we're not only doing each town and village in the correct Welsh name, but every house and ruin in the mountains, more or less. We've done as much as we could with the funding. What was interesting about that, normally when there's an emergency in Africa, people in Europe and North America and Britain, they get together and they start drawing round the map using their osm.org. They sign up on osm.org. They wait for the confirmation email. It comes into the inbox after 5 minutes. You can then go into a tutorial where it tells you how you use imagery, so a photographic satellite imagery, and on top there's a transparent layer, and you use the mouse, so you need a mouse really, to trace round building shapes, and you just say that's a building, and then under building there'll be a lot of choices. It could be residential, it could be a pub, it could be all sorts. You just say yes because you can see it's a building. Then people on the ground come in, or community members who live there can then bring more knowledge to that. But the point is you've got the shape there now, and you've got hundreds of shapes, and that's what you do from here to Africa when there's an earthquake. In the Ebola outbreak, we're now mapping in detail those areas from around the world, but local people then will be updating whether it's a hospital, whether it's a school, how useful it can be, or how much risk it brings, like a marketplace might start spreading infections. We actually used African people who I'd trained to draw around those buildings in Wales.
What?
So we decolonised the process.
That's
mapping.
Amazing, because they've had the training, they know exactly what they're looking at.
They know more than Welsh, so I have them train Welsh new mappers now.
I love that.
I have African people, they're tribes people coming, one of my main guys lives in a mud house in Idi Amin's hometown. He comes online tethering on his phone. He does trainings with academics and council members and stuff and teaches people.
It's amazing for everybody. That,
it's a skill share. Everyone's just getting this picture of like, this is free for everyone. You can go online, you can make an edit, you can ask for help. Someone will get a notification, they'll get in touch with you and they'll help you. It's peer support.
I think what's nice there as well is the global culture, cross-pollination that people are all getting as well. So the gentlemen in the African countries, kind of shooting, he's seeing video calls with people in Wales, he's hearing a different accent, he's hearing a different way of saying the Welsh language, he's seeing a living room,
We all come in and we say, Bore da or Prynawn dda, and he will say Mingoni in his Lugbara tribal language, and we'll all share the language greetings, and that will happen. And also I've had him working with Jordanian and Palestinian and Druze people in Jordan, where I've triangulated it, and in Sardinia, where he's working with Sardo language people from those traditions, where the language is still embedded in this disappearing cultures of land management because of climate change. And
do you know what I love as well? This is about the Welsh people. It's that we're open to stuff like this. We're open to these things. We're not cut off. We're in other parts of maybe the UK. People might be a little bit more pretentious about it. Yeah. We're very similar.
We are can-do. And back to your first question, we are can-do in Wales because we've had to be a can-do nation. Yeah. So we need to keep that because England's not like that.
I think keep it and put jet fuel behind it. Yeah. And to be honest, I think COVID has put jet fuel behind it. I think when I say jet fuel, I mean like solar powered, green, clean energy. Let's make it clean. Yeah, so there's another question here then. So it's, where do you think we're still solving problems too late instead of preventing them earlier?
Yeah, I mean, so actually it brings the energy question. I wasn't going to use this one because I knew that it's something like this you'd ask me, but
I'm sorry.
And one of the things is the community rights thing. So in this book, it's about participation, datafication, and humanitarianism in the age.
Show the front of the
in
book.
The age of digital mapping.
There you go. Lovely, carry on.
And it says some have argued that representation has diminished, and people are increasingly reduced to data points. In turn, this data has become ever more difficult to analyse without vast computing power, leading to a dependency on the old colonial powers to refine the data collected from people before selling it back to them. We need to reclaim the data. And so, but one of the important points of that this leads me on to, of what do you think we need to do? We need to build this map and we need to value it for ourselves. We need to build the community archive of the old stories attached to those places, embedded in a way that's sustainable as long as, this is Wiki, this is open source. It will be around until the internet's not around. It won't be like, it's not on a pay wall, it's not on a contract.
Jeff Bezos is not going to shut it down.
No one can shut it down except for, the only country maybe is China where they have limits on stuff, but basically it's completely sustainable. But onto the energy thing. So I was working in the mountains and I realized that a lot of the villages, my village in the mountains has got micro hydro. It was started by a lady's father called Maya, who lives in the village, and she told me the story of how her father had started this. He had some mining expertise, but he started this turbine on a stream, down in the valley, and it served a 3-mile radius. The wires went through the trees, and every 1st of January they went round, they had a shilling box and they'd pick up the electricity, and that was their family business. Then in the 60s it got nationalised, which is fine. The electricity board took over, which was a great idea, but then it got privatised. And it didn't get maintained, and now we're having our energy sold back to us that's come from various points. Leading on to the question, in the mountains, large pylons getting put up in the mountains. There's been a bit of a thing in the news about some resistance to this. Those communities, I came across them, and I was telling a lot of communities, this is a great story. What stories have you got? Not necessarily wanting the micro hydro story, but every time people get an idea, don't just think of micro, think about what you did on horseback, or how everyone used to share food or have preaching sessions, which also brought people cohesively together in the community. Outdoor preaching happened down there, which it's religion, but it also had a social, and shops have a socio-economic benefit and mental health benefit. Lots of different things to talk about around maps and why they're important, but also community members. But everyone would talk, we had a hydroelectric, we had a turbine, all across West Wales that I could find. So we had all of those. Up in the mountains, they're bringing these massive wind masts. Someone told me either 82% or 92% is completely even exported into Europe and sold, but where's the money? It's not in the community. Those are masts. I love a wind mast if it's community owned. But these are corporate wind masts, and they're 2 or 3 times the height of the hills that they're on. And they're areas of outstanding natural beauty. They're not putting them in the Cotswolds, they're not putting them on golf courses, just saying. But what they are doing is putting up there. The community said, could we make maps of our area that was like about our ancestors and how you can't, but the footprint of a wind mast isn't a big deal. But I woke up one night, had this brainwave. We put all the place names onto the map around West Wales. Welsh is toponymic, so Welsh language, it describes, as we all know, describes where
place.
It is.
Yeah.
Every place where water has generated energy, might be for a woolen mill, might be for an oat mill, might be for anything you like, or it might be a hydroelectric, but basically energy has been generated by water. Every place in West Wales can be found. You can search that name.
By the name.
Felyn or Melyn or Pandy. So I did a search and suddenly there's this image of all these dots of potential rural regeneration.
Because it's
energy,
already there.
Self-sufficient energy. And rain hasn't stopped falling in 100 years.
And we've had a really harsh
there's
winter.
still water there.
And we can store it now as well. There's many more ways to store energy. Which is part of it.
And we can share it. There are energy networks, and it's brilliant. The community energy movement that Leanne Wood and Beth Winter are leading.
Yeah.
All of those things are fantastic. So another thing that the Welsh Government could do is tie them together with initiatives like Bro Festiniog and Cymunedoli and all of those networks in the North Wales region, and we're hoping that it'll tie all together.
And I think we're in a really exciting time right now with Welsh politics.
Potentially, it's amazing.
And I think it's very wise to say potentially.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had it yet.
It's about it's about getting practical.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, and it's a bit. I'm often thought of as the inconvenient truth. We were saying.
Yeah.
I'm like the guy in the room who's an independent. I'm quite technical. I'm happy to say things how I think they are. And one of the things that you were going to say, I hope Wales gets right, reinstate practical culture. I think I've got some notes from before this meeting where I just say, and I've presented on this at other forums, bring back the polytechnics, bring back technical skills, but also involve decision makers in getting their hands dirty, build it into the job description where people can't make decisions if they don't realise what's possible.
The realities behind the decisions.
The realities behind it, but also what's possible of like, I've advocated for communities to government level in many different countries, to government ministers, and the community has a strong voice, and they are the voting electorate.
Yeah.
They're the public.
They're there because of us.
So basically, if a decision maker knows the tools, it's a direct link to his community or her community, and it's really, really, I can't say how important that is. I've worked within the NHS and struggled to initiate this kind of new look at how we work and how getting out of the office and having to learn something. It's great fun. It's great fun. Make that easier. Make practical work. Legislate for it.
Yeah.
That's so important. And then communicate that legislation. So communication and technical sort of points are my two main things. As you can see, I love to communicate and I'm quite technical. So I think those two things are something we really need to work on. See our strength outside of Britain and inside of Europe, and see how much technical and community memory we are still holding, and grab it quick, because people are, every week I hear about some wise person with amazing skills, and the people who's left us because they're older generation, and the future generations of tying up younger people with older people so that partner buddying, like we do buddy mapping, is so important. So yeah, I think there are a few things there, but I think
that wasn't one.
No, it wasn't. But independent thinking, as well as independent politics. Work out this water issue. It's a natural resource we now own. I've talked to Jane actually about this, Jane Davidson as well. But try and find a way through working out what our natural resources are, what our community resources, and our culture.
So natural value, isn't it?
It's the cultural resource that I think underlies for me all of the rest of it. Because you change culture, and then you can get people to engage with politics, community, natural resources, all the other things.
And it all comes together, which is beautiful as well. So if I was to say to you then, if I was to go, because we always go to the next guest from our current guest. So if I asked you, and I'm happy for you to give me more than one, you might want to give me a company, you may want to give me a project for me to go and visit, but if you were to send me out to go and see something amazing happening in Wales, where this is maybe happening, where would you send me to, Rupert? Hard, I know, with somebody so good. I will just say as well, what I keep coming across on, and what GreenWales is, it wasn't intentional, but it's coming through, is banging the drum of Wales, because we're far better than we give ourselves credit for. And I think it's that ultra-localization where we just, our world is in a microcosm of, I live in the Rhondda, and people who live in the Rhondda just see the Rhondda. They don't see anything further out, And everybody I'm going to see, this is maybe interview 20, maybe 30 now. Yeah. And I've been blown away by every single person I've seen. Yeah. And I think to have such a high density of amazing projects, ideas, charities, businesses in such a small country, we got the Wellbeing Future Generations Act. We founded the NHS. We're the first fair trade nation in the world. And that's just me picking that up out of nowhere. And I've been told things in the last 12 weeks, especially, that have blown me away, where Wales is we're just amazing. We're just leaders in our own right, and I wish. I think now with the latest election, I think we do have a bit more confidence as a country, because we are representing ourselves a bit more. Yeah. And by it being a Plaid country, it doesn't matter if you're a Plaid supporter or not. It's a party for Wales and of Wales, so we should grab it hard and influence it and push it in the way that we want to see it for the people of Wales. Yeah. So back to my questions. I give you time to think.
You have given me a bit of time to think.
Come on then.
Luckily, yeah. So one thing I was going to say, can I have 3 answers?
Yeah.
Okay, the first one, traditional scrapyards, not gentrified recycling, but looking at how things were always done. Old school projects that are still running. I can name a few,
Please do.
Around the place. Some of them have had to, I'm not formally, but people have always recycled. Farmers recycle. So
I've got to go and find these people. Okay, so you've got to give someone to. Theodore and Sons, I know in Bridgend.
Okay.
Their reclamation yard. Well, there's one in Merthyr as well.
There's one in Merthyr, but champion the repurposing of stuff more, but using what's already there, using stuff that has a heritage of that's beginning to get legislated out, because maybe their road surface, they can't afford to put asphalt down, so now they're having to close down their scrapyard or their something like that. So that's one thing. I then was thinking Bro Festiniog. I'm not sure if you know of Kerry at Bro Festiniog.
No, tell me more.
Okay, so they're an amazing community movement, been around for years. They're part of the Cymunedoli, which is this broad North Walian collaborative of different social enterprise groups. They talk to each other, they share. So they're a national network of local communities as opposed to a global one. But their model is, from what I can see and what my contact has been, quite similar. And they also to OpenStreetMap and that platform that I'm used to doing, where we were all working online and physically. And the digital map is all about physical things. So it's quite a post-digital DIY. It's a DIY project. No corporation is doing this for anyone. So the mapping is actually not all techie. I'm not a techie. I can't code. I don't know anything. I just know a bit about how people work and how I know how to weld. Yeah. I know how to do woodwork and tenon and mortise joints. I know how to fix cars. They're more important than any of the other stuff. We need to do more of that. We need to do it at massive scale. But the Cymunedoli is a super interesting network of those kinds of organisations.
You get so carried away. I love it. Carry on.
But what part of that's really, really strong? I'm a member of Cymdeithas y Cymorth, which is the International Federation of Fellowship of Reconciliation, and we do a Hedwch ar Waith is one of our Roundtree funded movements, and that's put me in touch with SAIL, which is this North Walian alternative economy group. There's a guy called Sel who's really worth a visit. Okay. Out of Caernarfon area. I'll try and connect you up. They are living that alternative barter economy thing where, so they're really going
That sounds
for it.
amazing.
Yeah, they're kind of quite undigital. So I'm still trying to get through to them that I'm quite undigital, that I'm very a practical person.
But you're struggling to get through because they're totally not.
But they're really like, because they fit, and rightly so, they're skeptical about corporate digital, Google, Meta, all of those, Microsoft. That's not my world. I live outside of that world, and all of the systems of open source have the equivalent, but we're not getting our data mined.
Yeah.
It's an important point, and I'd like to maybe finish with that one. Okay, so basically I've explained how you go to osm.org, all right? Now, once you've gone to osm.org and you've got yourself a username, you can go to the learning platform. If you've been to a university in the past 10 years, you've probably seen such a platform. There's millions of pages all about the different, they're really hard to navigate. There's a OSM wiki, and that's at wiki.osm.org. And that's a structure, it's a learning structure. It's not Wikipedia, it's using that format, but it's a learning structure where if you type into a Google search, OSM, how do I tag my local petrol station, my local public toilets, it will take you to one of the pages where a project somewhere has got all of these instructions. We're in Japan and we did it this way. We're in Germany. We've been talking to Japan and we've realized this is how the world should do it. Anyone got any ideas? Okay, this is, so it's a
lessons have been learned
support
already.
network that's out there already. If you want a map for humanitarian and you'll get taught how to do this mapping with a load of other people, then what I do suggest is go to the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. That's how I first came into OpenStreetMap, and you go, that's called hot.osm.org. There's a tasking manager, and you'll see all the different projects where people have taken an area, you take a part of it, and you draw around, you trace around those buildings with your mouse. At the moment, we're mapping furiously in DRC. We're doing all the buildings and the roads so we can get trucks in and we know where the people are for the Ebola outbreak. But you can go to online events that you'll find on that learning platform, the OSM wiki, wiki.osm.org, the one I mentioned. They will have a list of events. You click on them, Eventbrite, go in, say you're a beginner, and people will help you to make a very real difference right away without spending a penny.
And it can be in your own street, your own town, your own village. Yeah. So we got one last thank you just for coming onto the show. We have a little GreenWales badge to give you.
Oh,
it's okay. And at home, if you're thinking, this is great, how can I help? Really easily, you just subscribe. Because the more that you subscribe, the more exposure these companies get. The only way I get to this channel to be successful and all these companies to give the exposure that I want to give them is for them to get the subscribe, the like, the comment. The more it gets out there, the better. So literally, you just press that subscribe button helps me get this out. Everything we do is aligned to Wellbeing and Future Generations Act of Wales. And I always say it is all about the future generations, but it's actually about the now generation as well. It's about us and about how we live, and we're instantly going to start benefiting if we start to do those incremental sustainable changes. And having someone like yourself come in today, it's really inspiring to show people how actually they can do things on the ground right now to make a change and be like a citizen scientist to a certain extent. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.